Okay, I'm glad you mentioned jokes because I've actually got one that I've been working on. It's a bit of a long one, but I'm pretty proud of it.
Oh, no.
So it's definitely related to our theory today.
Okay.
One day, Ash Ketchum is out adventuring on his Pokemon journey, having a good time, when suddenly, in a flash, Mewtwo appears before him, looking frantic and carrying the limp, unmoving body of their friend Mew. Ash, he says, you have to help us. Mew has become afflicted with an illness the likes of which this world has never seen before. We've tried everything, but it seems there is no cure that we Pokemon are able to find. You're our last hope, Ash. So Ash, he takes one look at Mew, and then without a word, he nods and sets off down the road, gesturing that Mewtwo should follow. So on Ash walks, with Mewtwo carrying Mew behind him and wondering just where they're going. Are you taking us to the Pokemon Center? Ash, I've already tried that. Nurse Joy's medicine cannot help us. And Ash shakes his head, simply continues walking. Mewtwo just follows along, with curiosity building and building until suddenly he speaks up again. Ash, are you taking us to Officer Jenny? That's not a bad idea, but I'm not sure if the authorities will fare any better than... Ash cuts him off, shaking his head yet again, then gestures to keep following. Hours later, suddenly he realizes they're walking through the outskirts of Pallet Town, and an idea materializes in his head. It's so simple, he doesn't know why he didn't think of this before. I understand, Ash. You're taking us to Professor Oak. Of course. His great scientific mind will be able to concoct a cure for Mew in no time. But Ash shakes his head more emphatically than ever, and yet again gestures for the befuddled Pokemon to follow him. Eventually, they reach Ash's house, and they go inside, Mewtwo not having the faintest clue what Ash has in mind. Without stopping, Ash marches directly upstairs to his room, opens one of his drawers, and pulls out a Poké-Flute. What? Mewtwo scoffed. You think a Poké-Flute can save our dear friend Mew? Are you joking, Ash? But Ash already has the flute to his lips. As he whistles the first notes of the melody, to Mewtwo's astonishment, Mew springs to life. He somersaults through the air as if there was never a problem at all. Mewtwo gawks, then turns to Ash and manages to stammer out, How? How could you possibly have known that a melody from your Poké-Flute would cure Mew's illness? And Ash just shrugs and explains, Music.
Oh,
Was
wow.
that good?
Ash, stupid.
Music. Oh no. Hey, it worked. Ash must be pretty smart. Oh man.
Yeah, I guess it did. Hello and welcome to The Popcorn Isn't Real, the podcast where we tell bad jokes. No.
Yeah. We tell amazing Pokemon jokes.
The podcast where we talk about fan theories. And we've got the mother of all fan theories today, or at least a movie that has spawned so many fan theories.
Dude, you might say it spawned this podcast.
Yeah, and in many ways, this movie that we're going to talk about spawned this podcast. So what are we talking about today? Presumably something Pokemon related.
Yeah, very, very Pokemon related. Well, it's not actually just a movie. In fact, it didn't even start as a movie. It's actually a novel. It's a well-known, renowned horror novel by legendary author Stephen King, the man who has been cursed to keep writing nonstop. He cannot stop writing or he will die. That's my own personal fan theory about Stephen King.
Yeah, I buy it.
I think that he made a deal with the devil after he got run over by that van back in the 90s. And he basically promised that in exchange for his life, he would never, ever stop writing.
I mean, it was a good deal for him.
Well, yeah, and it's a great deal for the devil because he gets all these amazing horror books to pervade the world with evil, right? I mean, it makes so much sense. I love Stephen King. I love his novels. I love a lot of the movies that have been made into novels that he's written. But most of all, I love The Shining. The Shining is my favorite book of all time. It's like one of my favorite movies of all time. By the way, what are your thoughts on The Shining? I think you've only seen the movie. Do you think it's a good movie? Do you think it's a bad movie?
The first time I ever saw it, I was really scared, but I didn't see the whole movie. I just happened to turn on the TV, and it was the scene where he walks into the green room 237, and the woman is in the bath, and then she hugs him, and then she turns into the old lady, and I thought that was pretty dang scary.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't think the rest of the movie is all that scary, but I think that one scene is pretty scary.
Yeah.
I mean, she turns into a weird old lady. She's not even like a ghost or a corpse. She's just old.
Yeah, I know. Well, no, she is. She's rotting. She's got all these splotches of rot on her body.
Could just be that she's old, though.
I think the scene where
old people.
They're scary. Oh man, I don't like them. I'm like, oh, every time I see him, I'm like, I want to run. I think that the scene that preceded that with Danny going into that room was actually somewhat scarier than when Jack goes in, but both are good. In preparation for this theory, I've been watching a lot of interviews, and I've gotten the impression that I think a lot of people don't really like The Shining as a horror. They maybe like it as like a Kubrick movie. Every single interview shown in every featurette, every documentary I've watched, they'll show like a famous person like Steven Spielberg, and they'll be like, what do you think of The Shining? And he'll immediately start with, well, I love Stanley Kubrick. He's great. He's an auteur. Yeah. He's a legend. I love his work. And The Shining, what can I say about The Shining? Right? Like kind of beating around the bush. It'll be like, the first time I watched it, I actually didn't like it that much, but I've seen it about 20 times since. And I guess all I can say is I can't stop watching it. So, right. Like everyone talks about it like that. Every single person is like, I didn't like this movie at first, but I've watched it since. Yeah. I'm just like, what? Do people not like this movie? I can't fathom that. How can you not like The Shining?
Right. Well, it's generally regarded to be one of the greatest horror films ever made.
I think so.
Because I used to be an archivist for AFI, they have a lot of clips of famous people that they interviewed about The Shining to get like sound bites about why it's such a great horror film. And one sound bite that they didn't use was they interviewed John Carpenter.
John Carpenter. I love that guy.
The interviewer who was doing this clearly hated John Carpenter, just couldn't stand the guy. He was like really annoyed with him because John Carpenter was being very dryly sarcastic, as he is a lot.
Okay,
it's kind of his personality.
John Carpenter. That's how he is.
There was one part where he asked John Carpenter, because they were doing this thing on like horror movies, like the top 10 horror movies. This was they did one TV special that was about the top 10 in each genre. And so he asked John Carpenter, like, what makes a good horror movie? How do you make a good horror movie? And John Carpenter was like, oh, well, I'm actually cursed so that I cannot ever reveal that information because there is one thing that makes a good horror film, but I made a deal with the devil and never revealed. And
Why was John Carpenter there?
Interviewer speaks up and it's just like he sounds so annoyed. He's like, yes, I can see that I've asked the wrong question and now I'm being made fun of for this question I have. And then he tries to rephrase it and he's like, so what is like just some things that you can do to make a good horror film? And John Carpenter says the same thing. He's like, no, I told you I can't tell you I made a deal with the devil.
I mean, you got to double down on it if you've already said that. You can't reveal a single thing now.
Maybe John Carpenter's the one with the deal with the devil.
Yeah,
Stephen King.
Everyone who makes horror, they're all cursed. John Carpenter, Stephen King.
Anyway,
everybody.
With The Shining, I think he was already annoyed with John Carpenter because he asked him about The Shining, and John Carpenter very flippantly and insultingly says, The Shining is the most hilarious comedy ever made.
It is, in a lot of ways.
I agree with him. And
so good.
The guy actually, the interviewer interrupts John Carpenter to say, please restate the name of the movie because they don't have the interviewer in the actual special. They only use sound bites. So
right. So he has to say The Shining.
John Carpenter clearly, they're not going to use this sound bite, right? So, but he restates it anyway. He's like, The Shining is the most hilarious comedy ever made.
Oh my gosh.
And of course they didn't use that clip.
That's a great interview. I gotta work in an archive sometime so I can listen to all these never before seen clips of directors who just didn't want to be interviewed that day. Before we get into our theories, I'd like to talk about Room 237, and I think you'll probably want to talk about that too. For those who don't know, Room 237 is a documentary about the fan theories that have sprung up around The Shining, which is just a really, really silly and fun idea for a documentary. And a lot of the theories that they have are pretty silly and fun themselves.
I think it's actually a divisive film because I've heard a lot of people say it's a really good documentary, which is why I originally watched it because I'd heard good things. But I've also heard the other, that it's just like so bad and so stupid. But I think the people who think it's so bad and so stupid, and I could be wrong, but I think that it's a tongue-in-cheek documentary. Yeah. I think it's kind of making fun of the theorizers, the people with the fan theories. But anyway, so I watched Room 237, and I thought Room 237 was so much fun, and I loved the way it just delved into these inanely stupid little details in every scene. These aren't the interesting parts of The Shining they're even talking about, you know? Uh-huh. And I just thought that was fun, and I wished that this existed for other movies. And so I decided that should be our podcast. It should be Room 237. Give them the Room 237 treatment for other movies. It's tongue-in-cheek, it's funny, but in a weird, creepy way, because we're going into the strangest little details and making the most inane parts of the movie, you know, so much darker and weirder. Kind of like The Shining itself. I don't think The Shining should be taken all that seriously.
I agree.
And so, of course, a movie about stupid fan theories of people taking The Shining way too seriously is like right up our alley. You know, that's what we do. We take movies way too seriously, but we're very tongue-in-cheek about it.
I had that exact roller coaster of emotions as I watched Room 237 because it came very highly recommended from you, and I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be fun. I'm gonna learn some awesome theories about The Shining. I'm gonna catch some really tiny little details and stuff." And then I was watching it, and I was like, "These are the dumbest theories anyone has ever come up with." The one guy was like, this movie's actually about the subjugation of the Native Americans. You know why? Because he throws a ball at a Native American tapestry. Whoa. It's like, okay, maybe. Yeah. And then another guy was like, this movie's actually about demons that are sexually attracted to humans. And the best evidence he had of this was 3 frames of the movie where one random dude stands up and there's a box behind him, like a rectangular box sideways so that it looks like it's pointing out from his crotch. And he's like, it's his cock. He's a sex demon. And I was like, no, he's just standing in front of a box.
He slows it down.
So
that guy is actually crazy. And
that guy is insane.
Don't believe that this movie, directed by Rodney Asher, could be made without it wanting to poke fun at that guy, but subtly, because it doesn't want that guy to realize.
Of course.
But like, that guy says that, at the moment when I think his name is Ullman shakes hands with Jack to welcome him into the hotel, if you slow it down frame by frame and then pause it, there's like a black box that sort of blends in with his black slacks. And he's like, it's a massive erection.
They're blue. He's wearing navy blue. It doesn't even blend in. But anyway,
it's a massive erection. And then he says it's a joke that Kubrick put in there on purpose. I'm like, Kubrick was hugely into attention to detail. So I can give some of these some credit just that it's Kubrick.
Okay.
But he wasn't slowing this thing down frame by frame and like, there's an erection right there.
And he definitely wasn't slowing it down frame by frame in real life as he filmed it. I mean, come on.
Like, you don't put that soundbite in your documentary unless you want to make fun of the crazy guy who is saying it.
Well, my favorite part of this movie, because after talking to you about it, I stopped watching it and I had a chat with you and you're like, it's tongue in cheek. And I was like, oh, it is. And then I watched the rest and had a great time. It's a great movie. Everyone should watch it. It's hilarious.
Which I also think that is how you should watch The Shining.
Yes,
like
it is.
As John Carpenter
I love
would
The
say.
Shining.
The greatest comedy ever made.
Say this. It's great. But My favorite part of Room 237 was every single one of them, every single theorist in that documentary. Basically, first they would they would point out some random tiny detail that they latched onto because it was whatever they were thinking about at the time. And then they would say, without fail, every single one of them then launched into a huge dissertation about how Stanley Kubrick is a genius. He is literally Einstein level of intelligence. He's so smart. He knows so much more than the rest of us. He puts us all to shame. He's above human. He's like a god. And then, using that as a springboard, they would say, he's so smart that whatever I'm thinking must be true. And I was like, what? How does... You're basically... You're essentially so smart, just talking yourself up by... Exactly. You're like... You're using some sort of reverse awful idiocy logic to say, I'm really just as smart as Stanley Kubrick because I noticed this random thing that I'm sure he did. And I'm just like, no. Oh, I gotta love the absolute hubris of fan theorists. How literally they think they're right no matter what. They can't be wrong. They'll even go to the director themselves, have them on their podcast, say complete idiocy that the directors never intended with such force of will.
We are playing the role of the idiots who are making fun of ourselves for other
so
people's
much fun
entertainment.
After I understood, these guys are me. This is me in this movie. Oh, man. It's a good documentary.
Another source of inspiration for this podcast was another podcast called Lizard People. It's a comedy podcast about conspiracy theories. The host, Caitlin Hempstead, has said that she's sort of trying to raise awareness of how stupid and ridiculous conspiracy theories are. And so that's kind of part of what our podcast is too, is just kind of shining a light on in a tongue-in-cheek way.
Shining.
Oh my gosh. On sort of the pareidolia that drives, the human nature.
Look at you with your $600 words there. Oh man,
human
Mr.
nature
College, Mr.
of
College
finding
writer.
Patterns where there are no patterns, which then turns into these stupid conspiracy theories where the people coming up with them think they are so smart, just like you were saying, just so absolute hubris. And and it's funny. Conspiracy theories aren't necessarily funny because they've really gotten out of hand these days, but it can be funny. I used to be so into like the Illuminati conspiracy theories because it was funny, because it's so stupid. But it is kind of fun to see all the dumbass connections. But then the Illuminati conspiracies just became the QAnon conspiracy theories, which were mainstream with 50% of the United States somehow.
Well, and like 50% dumber in every way. But
yeah.
The theories in Room 237, the theorists, they do hone in on really tiny details and really small little things in the movie, which is kind of fun. But to our credit, I feel like we go beyond that, where we not only are looking for details, but we're also looking for ways that our theories actually tie into the plot or into the character development.
We're telling a story.
Right. Well, no, we're just trying to find something that actually fits in the movie itself. These people are just throwing random shit at the wall and seeing what stuck, right? Like,
I haven't watched any of the director's other documentaries. He's made a lot of other documentaries, Rodney Asher, about kind of conspiracy theory related things. So it could be that it's not tongue in cheek. He's not he really likes conspiracy. I don't know, but I feel like it's got to be
a little of that, right? Like,
I think he's just like us. I think he likes conspiracy theories.
Our podcast is very tongue in cheek, but also I believe like 99% of the theories that we say. Come on, did he ever talk to Joseph Kaczynski? Did he ever talk to Michael Miner, creator of RoboCop? Did he ever talk?
He just talks to people like us. We're his guest.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, I wish that would be great. We should be. Another thing that I wanted to point out about Room 237, a lot of these things that these theorists were focusing on and basically saying, aha, this was included in the movie, and Stanley Kubrick is a genius who has unparalleled, flawless attention to detail. Therefore, he must have decided to put this in to indicate that the movie is about the subjugation of Native Americans, right?
Right.
a lot of those details that they were pointing out were not put into the movie due to Kubrick. They were put into the movie because of the source material, because of Stephen King, because he wrote it, right? Like all of the Native American imagery is in the movie because Stephen King wrote the original novel that says that the hotel was built on a Native American burial ground. It wasn't Kubrick's decision. Yes, he could have taken all that out, but then it actually would have been like a conscious decision to remove the Native American imagery, not to put it in, right? Like it was already there. He just didn't remove it.
Room 237 starts out with the soundbite setting the tone of the whole documentary of this guy saying that before the movie even released, he saw the poster and the poster said like the horror that swept across the American continent or something like that.
I was so confused because that was Tom Cruise looking at that poster.
Yeah, no, I love that, dude. I love that.
Was that
Room 237
from Eyes Wide Shut?
Yeah, just takes random clips from other Kubrick
from Eyes
films.
Wide Shut, mostly Eyes Wide Shut,
and it constantly has Tom Cruise this shot from Eyes Wide Shut where he just walks up and like watches things on this screen.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
Oh, look, it's showing
so
The Shining.
Yeah,
which it wasn't
in the actual Eyes movie. Wide Shut had a lot of Tom Cruise watching The Shining in it. I didn't know. I haven't seen it. My main thought was that as much detail as these fan theorists supposedly paid to the movie, none of them had the follow through to actually read the book, or they would have realized that they were way off base. But anyway,
I mean, with the Native American theory, I kind of like the detail where he's saying that this was before the movie released. The horror hadn't swept across the American continent. Like the book, I think he kind of says the book wasn't that huge. I don't know if that's true. I think it
was.
It was Stephen King book.
It has always been Stephen King's like biggest book before the movie was made as well.
But I like the tone of him essentially saying that because Kubrick can't have been prophetic, then his advertisers
he must have been talking about
directed
something that
by
happened.
him to put that detail in there, because the actual horror that swept across the American continent was the killing of Native Americans.
Wow. Pretty great logical leap there.
The other great detail, this is like the popcorn isn't real level detail.
Please don't
that
tell
I love.
me Stanley Kubrick's face in the clouds, because that was so stupid.
No, that one was
There
dumb.
was no face in the clouds.
There's no face in the clouds.
He definitely didn't airbrush his own face.
I don't know that guy's name, but he has
guy?
made like a lot of like podcast episodes and
he also talked about the book he was going to write, which by the way never came out. He never wrote that book.
Well, he's just like an old man. But anyway, he's probably rotting.
Whoa, oh no. Old people, always rotting. What's wrong with them?
So, I like the detail where is it, what's the brand name of the sauce? Is it Calumet?
Tang. Oh, Calumet. Something like that. Yeah, but it has like a Native American.
A Native American logo.
Chief.
How like the first time that they are in the walk-in freezer, all of them are facing forward, and you can see all of the Native American logo faces on the front. But the next time they're all turned away.
Ooh, that couldn't be, because the first time they went in there was closing day, where they had just organized everything to leave, and the next time they went in there was like 3 months later, after this family's been living there using the stuff for months and months.
I think either way, it was good attention to detail by the prop department to change things, between shots.
Well, yeah,
whether or not that
People
means that it's
here.
about
it's supposed to be
the Native Americans turning away or whatever. I don't even remember what the theory was there. It's something about Native American genocide.
Again, it doesn't it's fun little details, but it doesn't fit into the plot. He never tied it into the actual plot. So I'm like, no. Yeah. The theory fails. It's a complete failure.
So there's a lady who, her theory is that it's all sort of a maybe allegory for the story of the Minotaur, which honestly, that allegory I could buy because they go through a labyrinth and he is hunting them down.
He's chasing him in the maze. Yeah. Like that
totally makes
the
sense.
Best theory.
But the detail that it starts her with is the poster where there's like a skier and the skier looks a little weird. It's like it's like a silhouette of a skier maybe. But still, she says that it looks like a minotaur.
I got news for you, lady. Stanley Kubrick did not make that poster. That's just a poster. He didn't make it. Someone included it in the scene. It's a poster that existed. There's no way.
Might have. I don't know. He had a prop department. I have no idea.
Yeah, but no, Stanley Kubrick was known for not making his props. He would use things that already existed. He wouldn't try and make a new wardrobe. He would go and have them buy clothes that existed. He wouldn't build sets. He would have them scope out actual rooms that existed and then pick the room and say, build this room for me. And the reason for that was he was like, hey, there's already architects, product designers, fashion designers. There's already people out in the world actually designing products and outfits and rooms. I don't need to do that. I'm just a director. I'll use what exists and then I'll direct my movie. So he wouldn't have made his own poster. He would have just said, hey, go get a poster of a skier because we're in the mountains.
I think, though, that because Stanley Kubrick is so genius level intelligence that he would just see that poster. He would see how that skier resembled a minotaur.
And he'd be like, this is it.
And he would that represents what I want. So that's why he picked it. So he's so smart that lady is right.
He's so smart that she's smart. That's right. His intelligence bolsters her own in every way. It's so cool how when I believe something, other smart people make me feel correct because I think that they think I'm right.
Originally, when we started this podcast, we had the thing where we would argue against each other. We tried to make it more of a debate, and we ended up taking that out because, first of all, the theories are so flimsy.
Right.
Of course you can argue against them.
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing is we love basically pumping each other up because then we both feel great.
We're both so smart.
Yeah. Well, and thus you have the story of the legendary failed original name for our podcast, the Masked Debaters. We were originally going to wear masks and debate each other. So we were the Masked Debaters.
I don't remember that. But that sounds great.
And there's no other reason that we abandoned that name.
Dude, it really is a double meaning there. The way we're just, agreeing with each other and
I know
building each other. Dude, that would have been a perfect name.
It would have been great. Oh man, we gotta start the Masked Debaters podcast.
I thought you were gonna say we did originally. We considered popcorn poppers. We also considered
those were our fans. Our fans are the popcorn poppers.
We considered firing the head cannon.
That one's good. We should have done that. Not bad. I love the popcorns and real. I would never change it. But firing the head cannon, I think, has more easily understood meaning.
Well, see, with the popcorn isn't real. Everyone always asks us, why is it called that?
I know. Everyone's like, why did you name it this?
To me, though, that's the point. Because of what I wanted to do with the podcast, how it's tongue-in-cheek. I wanted
you wanted to make a podcast
to be
for
something
you.
Weird and stupid.
It's
incomprehensible. Just like the fan theories.
I will say this. I think that anyone who listens to our podcast regularly probably understands the idea of enjoying a fan theory because of how incomprehensible it is. And enjoying a podcast because of how incomprehensible it is. So, you're all popcorn poppers. That's basically what I'm trying to say. In my heart, you'll always be the popcorn that's popping but isn't real.
You're all masked
because you're not real. Because no one listens to it. Oh no.
So the one theory from that documentary that I don't think it originated in that documentary. It's been a theory for a long time, and this one is definitely true, is that in the book, The Shining, Jack drives a red Beetle.
Yeah. In
the movie, he drives a yellow Beetle. In the movie, also, there is a random shot unrelated to anything. Past
a wreck, which just so happens to be
a red
destroyed
beetle.
Red beetle on the side of the road, on the sidewinder, all the way up to the
totally
hotel.
True, that Stanley Kubrick was basically giving the middle finger to Stephen King, saying, "This is not your story. This is my story, which is absolutely what he was doing. Stephen King hated this movie, and I mean, it's very different from the book in many ways.
No, it's not. I want to get into that.
All right. Well,
my personal
I haven't read the book. Why am I talking about that?
People who say it's way different from the book haven't read the book, because it's not that different, including Stephen King. Dude's never read his own book.
Jerk.
Yeah, moron.
No, but I mean, I think that's totally confirmed. Kubrick definitely was saying, this is my movie.
If we're going to talk about that, then we also have to talk about the other theory that is actually widely accepted and shouldn't be. The theory that Stanley Kubrick faked the moon landing. Yeah. Now,
I mean, that's a full-blown conspiracy theory. It's crazy.
The dumbest thing anyone's ever come up with. And
the craziest thing is that theory has almost nothing to do with The Shining. It's just moon landing deniers.
Well, listen, the dumbest thing is that you'd have to be a complete idiot to come up with this theory. You'd have to be so stupid that you would be like, who would NASA hire to fake footage of the moon? Aha! The director who filmed 2001: A Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick, because that was about space. So therefore, he must have been the director of the moon land. No, that's idiotic. There's a huge difference between making a movie and filming like footage of an event. There's no reason that they would go out and get a Hollywood director at all if they were going to fake footage from astronaut cameras. And if they were going to get a Hollywood director, they definitely wouldn't get one as big and powerful as Kubrick. They would get like the least well-known director who they could basically like blackmail if they wanted to keep it safe.
No, but it's because at the time he had made 2001, so he was like the only director who could do space movies.
No, that's dumb. That's idiotic. That's so stupid.
Well, he doesn't shoot a shot on the moon in 2001, though. And he does a lot of cool spaceship shots.
They go. The first thing they do in that movie is they go to the moon.
Oh, okay.
I don't blame you. No, I'm not mad at you. I'm not making fun of you. I'm making fun of the movie. Nobody in their right mind would ever remember that they go to the moon, and yet it takes up 40 minutes of the movie.
Oh crap!
It's ridiculous. That movie is insane. You got to watch my cut of it. I took out all the moon stuff. I took out lot of. I took out Stanley Kubrick's name and replaced it with my own.
Wow, dude! Oh my gosh, you're a genius. You're just like the conspiracy theorists.
I love it. The credits are my favorite part. It flashes. And it's like a film by Torvald Johnson. I'm like, yes.
Wow.
Oh man. Also, the movie ends, I think in my version, I just ended it like when he's unplugging all the things and he's singing Daisy, Daisy, and then it all goes black.
That's when I turn off the movie. When Hal's gone,
that should be the end of the movie.
Over.
It shouldn't go past that.
Hal is the only relatable character. The humans are more robotic than Hal.
Yes, they are. Along with this NASA fake the moon landing thing, a lot of people say Stanley Kubrick was trying to drop hints that he faked the moon landing. Why else would he have Danny wear a rocket ship shirt? At one point in the movie, in The Shining, Danny is wearing like a sweater with a rocket ship on it. And they say, he's trying to tell us that NASA hired him to film rocket ships going to the moon. No, maybe, just maybe, Danny is wearing that shirt because every little boy in the entire world was wearing that shirt because NASA had just landed on the moon and everybody had space fever. The moon landing, for people who weren't alive during that period, me included, you have to understand, the moon landing was as big as it gets. It was bigger than Marvel. It was bigger than Star Wars. Like any craze that you can imagine having lived through, it was bigger than that. Therefore, if you go outside and see a kid wearing a Spider-Man t-shirt, you shouldn't be at all surprised to find out that in the 70s, kids wore rocket ship t-shirts. That was the big news at the time. Everyone wore them, and it makes perfect sense for him to have included that in his movie. That's what Danny would have worn. Yeah, it's not some secret hint. It's so stupid.
Well, so about what you were saying about people saying Stanley Kubrick must have faked the moon landing. There's this other podcast I listen to called Skeptoid. This guy uses scientific facts to debunk stupid conspiracy theories, and it's really good. I like the podcast. But he always talks about how people will constantly say, like, I have just upturned the whole scientific world with this one random thing I found out. I, an untrained non-scientist,
Right.
who hasn't been working my whole life studying these things, doing controlled experiments or anything like that. He says that they'll always say people's name, like this goes like above Einstein.
Right.
And he's like, why do they always reference Einstein when there are so many people who have done really good work in this field since then, in the past, like, however many decades have passed. And he's like, it's because that's the only name they know.
It's just like famous actor and well-known idiot Terrence Howard saying that he discovered that 1 × 1 = 2 and publishing his own paper calling it like Terrence Howard math because he believes that he is just the one genius who understands how math works and no one else does.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's just basically he's just saying these people have done so little research that they only know the name Einstein. They don't know any other scientists. So that's the example they use. And I think that's kind of the same thing with Kubrick faked the moon landing.
Right.
At the time, he was the big director. Yeah, they don't bother looking up any other directors. It was Kubrick.
No, I mean, honestly, I think you'd have to be pretty simple-minded to believe any sort of theory.
Yeah. Freaking idiots.
Stupid theorists. Fan theorists. No. Anyway, let's stop bad-mouthing ourselves.
One more thing I wanted to mention from Room 237. This is a popular detail that obviously goes beyond that documentary. The layout of the Overlook Hotel purposefully doesn't make sense.
It's just the way movies are made.
Right. No,
every layout of every house in every movie doesn't make sense. There's no difference from this in like The Simpsons. Seriously, The Simpsons house has random rooms in it that don't make sense. They don't fit into an actual layout.
In every movie, you do have someone in charge of continuity, but they might not be paying attention to like the blueprint. In some movies, you will make an actual blueprint because you're not filming any of these shots in like the same locations. You don't actually have this house built. So you need to know where things logically would be in relation to each other. However, maybe Kubrick just didn't do that. Or maybe he did it intentionally to give you like this very subtle sense of unease that something's not right. I do like the detail where they look into Ullman's office and there's windows where windows shouldn't be because, we kind of see the lobby and the office should not be on an outside wall.
The exterior shots of the Overlook, I think they were all at some actual hotel. I don't remember if it was actually in Colorado, but it is in the mountains somewhere. And then the interior shots were all on a soundstage in the UK, in England, where they had built sets for the interior of the hotel. And they built these sets to look like actual hotel rooms that Stanley Kubrick liked, right? That he said, hey, let's include this room in our movie. Therefore, of course, they didn't make any logical floor plan. They were just random rooms that he wanted to have scenes in, right? And I'll tell you one thing about
He's a very visual
Stanley,
director. He just
that's
liked
exactly
the way
what I was
things
going to
look.
say. As good as he was of a director, he was just as good of a cinematographer. Like the man is nothing if not able to make a striking scene, right? And I think it doesn't take that much of a leap of logic to say that he cared far more for creating a striking scene that looked interesting, either visually pleasing or visually sickening, or having some impact on how you feel, rather than caring about the continuity of the freaking layout of the hotel. Yeah. He didn't care about that. Yeah. And this is another thing that Kubrick would say often, and the people who work with him would say this too: realism is good, but interesting is better. And that was something that Kubrick was actually well known for, because it was sort of interesting and sort of counterculture to the movies that were coming out at the time, where a lot of the auteurs, a lot of the Steven Spielbergs and the other big directors at the time were pushing for realism. They were saying, if we make Jurassic Park, with dinosaurs in there, we want realism. We want you to feel like these dinosaurs are real. Whereas Kubrick would say the opposite. He'd be like, well, realism's great, but I'd rather if my movies are interesting. I will sacrifice realism for interesting. Yeah. Therefore, he didn't care about the layouts. He just wanted interesting shots.
Yeah. One detail that I love Wendy and Danny are watching the TV in the middle of the room on a stand, and there's no cord connected to the TV, and it's on. And people say maybe that Kubrick did that just to give us this very subtle sense of unease, like something's not quite right. Or maybe it's just a cool shot, and a cord coming out of somewhere would like not have looked as good.
Messy. Yeah.
No,
I think that's
either way, though,
but...
I do think it's very cool, and I like the idea. Of course, as a Popcorn Isn't Real host, that's the sort of detail that I love, where it's just like, how is the TV on? It makes no sense. It can't be in the middle of a room with no cord.
Kubrick would definitely do things during like the setup and during the shooting of his scenes to add either a sense of unease or a specific feeling, or just, visual pleasingness, right? Like something he thought looked cool. The scene where Jack is pounding on the door of the pantry trying to get out and pleading with Wendy, there's actual behind the scenes footage of Kubrick filming that scene. And as like they're acting it out, they're basically rehearsing it. Kubrick just like flops down on the floor, like between Jack Nicholson's legs. And he's like, you know what? Would this look good? And then he just lays down between Jack Nicholson's legs, looking up his nose with like a telescope. And he's like, okay, Jack, now try and give your lines. And Jack Nicholson's like, okay. And then he does the lines, and then Kubrick's like, yeah. But actually, I want you to look down the camera more while you're giving your lines. And the scene's great. Like in the movie, it's an amazing scene where all of a sudden the camera's looking up at Jack Nicholson from the ground as he's banging on the door, pleading with Wendy. It's a great scene, but it's very, very striking and strange, and something that he came up with on the fly and tweaked to make it seem more surreal and odd. And so, he could have definitely done stuff like that.
Well, my theory is that The Shining runs in the family. Wendy had The Shining. Jack had The Shining.
Danny's entire family shined. It wasn't just Danny who was making that hotel come to life. It was Wendy, and it was most of all Jack. So I'm going to go through all of my theory-related evidence, and we can discuss the film as well, and we can see where we get from here. I don't know what Stephen King is on about. I don't feel like Stanley Kubrick's version of his story is that different from the book. Stanley Kubrick took out a few things, like the topiary animals coming to life. But, like, how was he supposed to do that in, like, the late 70s? And then also he changed it. It was supposed to be a roque mallet that he's coming after them with. Roque basically being the precursor of croquet. So he's basically chasing them with like a flimsy croquet mallet. And that doesn't make sense. An axe is way better. I love the book, but that was a good change, man. Yeah. So we've got Jack, we've got Wendy, and we've got another main character in this story. We've also got the much forgotten Tony, the little finger that sometimes speaks to Danny. Danny says that Tony lives in his mouth and goes all the way down to his stomach. I don't know exactly what that means, but in the book and in the movie, we never really find out who Tony is. It seems like he's just sort of a figment of Danny's imagination. I think Tony is an actual person. I think Tony is basically the mental manifestation of Jack, of his father. And I think this is happening because Jack is so powerful with his shine, and Danny is so powerful with his shine that they're sort of getting their wires crossed all the time. Just keep that in mind. As they make their way to the hotel, first of all, fantastic movie. I love how it sets the stage. Jack Nicholson is the perfect actor to play Jack. Danny Lloyd is the perfect actor to play Danny. And I say this entirely because they are both named Jack and Danny, just like the characters, which I think is just perfect.
Yeah.
I wish every movie would do that. I think it's amazing.
Oh, and Shelley Duvall is perfect casting, even though she doesn't have the name Wendy.
I can't believe I didn't say Shelley. There is no one better to play Wendy than Shelley Duvall. She's so good. And I won't accept any criticism. It's not fair to Shelley Duvall.
Most people who don't like this movie
she's so good.
Always cite Shelley Duvall as like, no, she's too much. I love Shelley in this movie. I want to be Shelley in this movie. Well, maybe not. But dude. I love her costume. I love her makeup, just the way she's always just crying, dehydrated, because she's in a heightened state of panic for literally every scene she's in.
She's so perfect, and she's such a pushover. She's just like going along with everything Jack says as he berates her for no reason. And she's like, "Can I bring you a sandwich?" And he's like, "Every time you come in here, you break my concentration.
Just trying to be nice. Break my concentration.
and I have to go through all my work and get back on. Like, she didn't do anything. She just came in all nice and happy and said, "How you doing, Jack? Can I read some of your play?" And he's doing nothing. He's just sitting there writing all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy over and over. How much do you need to concentrate, Jack?
And he's doing no work. His job is to take care of the Overlook, which Wendy is doing.
She's doing it. She's taking care of the boiler. She's cleaning up. I love it. Oh, I love this movie. It's such an amazing portrayal of those two.
I hear
so good.
that Stephen King especially did not like Wendy in the movie because Wendy is like, he thought she was a strong, independent woman in the book.
She's not.
And in the movie, she's just like this abused housewife kind of thing.
No, I think she's just as strong in the book as in the movie. And I think in both of them, she does come into her own and save the day. I actually think Wendy's essentially the hero of the book and the movie.
Yeah, definitely.
They get to the hotel. Jack is sitting in the lobby waiting for his boss, reading a porno.
Yeah, I love that detail.
I just love it.
That's a good detail I learned from Room 237.
Room 237. That was the best detail they pointed out. It's an actual issue of Playgirl of all magazines. It's a Playgirl magazine, and he's reading it on his first day of work.
Just sets it down as though it was already there.
So good.
But he definitely brought it there.
Yeah, they wouldn't just have that laying around, or would they? Actually, they might have, because the Overlook has a sultry past. Mr. Ullman, the hotel manager, he's leading them around the grounds. He's showing them everything they need to see. Basically, they're walking across the street, and a car is coming directly towards them. It's just coming right down the road at them. And it's about like 3 feet away from them, not slowing down. And then the scene changes, and the car is gone. And they're still crossing the street. No car. And that could have just been, a random scene change that happened to include the car and the next one didn't. But I like to think of it as a vision. It's a vision of their death. It's a vision of their fast approaching car. The car represents
the car
the
wasn't
catastrophe.
there, and they were shining right then.
Who was shining? Danny's not here. This is just Jack and Wendy and Ullman.
True.
So therefore, this vision must have come from one of Danny's parents.
Oh man, some people
I think that's
shine
actually
and
good
some
evidence
don't.
there.
Well, my understanding is that it lets you see ghosts, and it lets you communicate telepathically with other people who shine, and it can let you see the future.
Yeah.
Is that
so? Shining is basically the 1970s phenomenon known as ESP. Okay. No one really calls it that anymore, but back then it was called ESP,
unless
extrasensory
it's
perception.
Like an anime or 999, because they love the word espers.
Yeah, they love that. Mm. But
never heard the word
basically,
esper used.
I believe the phrase was coined by the CIA, and they were doing research into it because they wanted to see if they could reproduce
That's a good use of money.
I know, how great. They weren't just like a
idiot.
literal money dump of a department. But anyway, yeah, they were doing a lot of research into it, trying to induce extrasensory perception in various individuals. And they categorized it as a number of things. They thought that extrasensory perception could be seeing ghosts. It could be sensing like something that you shouldn't know about. It could be an advanced form of that, an actual premonition of something that's going to happen in the future. It could be knowledge of the past that you weren't privy to. It could be knowledge of something happening where you are not. Like, for example, if your brother just got in a train wreck and you're 1,000 miles away and you feel it, that's ESP. And then it could also be probably the most fantastical representation of ESP would be actual telekinesis, like being able to move things with your mind. Shining can be all of those things that I just described.
Wow.
For most people, it represents itself in just a feeling, basically letting people know or giving people a hunch of something they shouldn't know about. For Danny, shining is all of the above, except for telekinesis in this movie, but not in the next one.
Wow.
But yes, no, it's shining is everything for Danny, because as far as shining goes, most people have a candle. He's got a floodlight. He's got it all. And I think his parents also show instances of being able to shine. And I think that this premonition they had of the car barreling down on them was one instance of shining.
Jack either didn't pick up on it or actively ignored it.
And that's actually an important thing in this movie, and in the book, and I think very deliberate in the book, is that Jack does shine, and he always explicitly ignores it.
If the shine does represent alcoholism, then it is inherited, because
it does represent alcoholism, also, by the way, in my opinion.
And also, and then when he's not ignoring it, when he's talking to the ghosts, is when he's giving into his alcoholism. Right?
Yep, it sure is. We see some instances of shining in Dick Halloran, the cook. He can shine in that he knows that Danny's nickname is Doc. He can talk to Danny in his mind. Okay,
my favorite. Oh, go ahead.
I learned that
you were just about to say some people shine and some don't.
Yeah, it's what? Like, whoa. I was like, I thought one or the other, but it turns out it's like both. No, I found out that some people did not like Scatman Crothers in this movie.
What?
And I'm like, what? How could you not? He's like perfect for the role. He is the perfect Dick Halloran.
My favorite scene of him in The Shining is when he starts going and
he's just like scatting because he's like a scat man.
That was from Robot Chicken, did a sketch where they were showing all the best scenes, all the best shots from The Shining, and one of them is just randomly Scatman Crothers scat singing, which he did not do in the movie.
I've always loved him in this role. I don't think there could have been a better casting. He's just like an awesome guy, and Dick Halloran was just an awesome guy, so it's perfect, right?
So wait, but I just realized something, because if The Shining represents kind of our vices and our alcoholism, that's why Dick Halloran is staring at that naked picture there's that naked picture on the wall behind him.
Well, just in front of him and behind him. He's got two of them, dude.
The dude's got vices too.
In his room, so he's got his bed, which is facing the TV on the wall. Above the TV is a giant picture of a naked lady. Behind him, above his bed, is a giant picture of a naked lady. And then next to his TV, in the corner, rolled up, are like 16 more posters of naked ladies all rolled up. Dude. So he must like swap them out once a week. He's like, time for another naked lady. Oh, yeah.
That makes sense. So Kubrick knew that these two had The Shining. So that's why they're both looking at porn, essentially.
There you go.
And then Wendy has The Shining because the very first scene we ever see her in, she kind of awkwardly just offers a cigarette.
Right. Well, and
it's really weird. I love the way she does it.
It is. It's kind of weird. So I think Wendy, her shine is mostly related to Danny. Dick Halloran explains this. He says that I think all mothers shine a little bit. And I think that's especially true for Wendy, but I think in a higher degree than most mothers. I think that she can shine when it helps her to protect Danny. And I think Danny kind of is her vice. Danny is why she's staying with this abusive, drunk asshole. He's the addiction in her life. She just can't get away from Danny. Therefore, she can't get away from Jack.
My one evidence that I had really for all of them shining was just that. Why do we know initially that Dick Halloran shines? Because he calls Danny Doc, which was their nickname for him, which he shouldn't have known because he just met Danny. But the thing is that Wendy must shine as well because they're not calling him Doc because of, I don't know, Bugs Bunny or something like that.
They're calling him Doc
because he will be Dr. Sleep.
Dr. Sleep. Whoa.
Yeah. She
Either
knows
that or
he's going to be
he became a doctor because they called him Doc.
Because Stephen King knew back when he wrote The Shining that he was many decades later would write a sequel.
Absolutely. And Stephen King, he's a genius. Therefore, we're geniuses because we caught
how
it.
Works.
We know. So
that Wendy is calling him Doc because she knows he's going to be a doctor.
She had a premonition. She, in her mind, she saw Danny growing up being a doctor, and she's like, "Oh, my little
here's
doctor
the thing.
boy."
It couldn't be that he became a doctor because they gave him the nickname Doc because of Bugs Bunny. No, because he's not a doctor.
No,
he doesn't have a doctorate. He's an orderly. He didn't give the nickname Dr. Sleep to himself. Other people did.
Yeah,
so it has to be a premonition with her calling him Doc.
100%.
The nickname Doc did not precipitate his future. It came from the future. How much
I'm with you. So I always loved Scatman Crothers as Dick Halloran. I think he's perfect for the role. But when watching the featurettes that I was able to find for The Shining, I just now love him immensely more. They were flashing through some interviews, they showed them talking to Daniel Lloyd, Shelley Duvall, Jack Nicholson, asking a bunch of questions, all kinds of stuff. Then they get to Dick Halloran, and they only show one single question. The interview only asks him one question. He talked tons to everyone else. To Scatman Carruthers, he asks one thing, and he just says, "So, how was it working with Danny Lloyd?" And Scatman Carruthers is like, "Oh, he's like a son to me." And then he stops, and he gets that shining look in his eyes, and he's staring directly at the camera, and he's like,
and then the next thing he says, but his mouth doesn't move.
Yeah. And I was like, I can hear his voice of what's going on. No, he's like, now I may cry, and if these tears come, then they're tears of joy. And then immediately his face is just streaming waterfalls of tears, like anime style. Like he had an actual premonition that he was about to start bawling. And then he continues, and he's like, I am just so lucky that in my life I was given the chance to work with all of these wonderful people. And he's just going off about how amazing everybody is. And then they cut away into a different interview. We never see more of him. And I was just like, whoa, Scatman Carruthers really is just like the nicest, most wonderful person ever. He just loves everyone. What a cool guy. As they are settling into the hotel, Jack actually tells Wendy, he turns to her and he says, I feel like I've been here before. Like I know every room, which is clearly a psychic premonition that he has had. Later on, for some of the crazy things that happen, you could say maybe this is the hotel working on Jack. Like it's wheedled its way into his brain enough that it can give him visions without him having any powers or anything. It definitely didn't have the chance yet. Like there's no possible way the hotel was working on him before he came there. We know that the hotel will never, ever affect someone who doesn't have The Shining.
Right.
It's never affected manager Ullman, who lives there every day and loves the hotel. The hotel is his life. He goes way deeper into it in the book. The man lives for that hotel, and he's completely unaffected by it. He does not care about the ghosts because he doesn't shine. The hotel cannot get to him. It definitely gets to Jack. Therefore, Jack, the man, shines. The little girl ghosts, the twins. I was like, why are they British? They're Grady's kids. Grady, the caretaker.
Yeah.
And I don't think Grady was British. There's little chance that some random British dude came all the way to America just to be a caretaker. But then when he shows up later as the butler, he's British. He actually is British. And then I was reading the book, and in the scene where he shows up in the book, it specifically says that Grady speaks with polite, clipped English. The dude's British, and it talks about how he talks in a very educated manner, and Jack is surprised by it, and he's like, I thought you were just the uneducated caretaker. And Grady goes on in the book to explain, he's like, oh, the hotel has educated me, and it can educate you. The hotel is so great. And I was like, well, that's odd.
I think Kubrick really was just
really did pay attention
to the book.
He paid more attention than me. I couldn't believe it. That was amazing attention to detail. Jack, as he, starts to fall more and more under the spell of the Overlook Hotel, he starts wailing in his sleep, thrashing around, having a nightmare, clearly having some sort of premonition. And then when he wakes up, he confirms this. He says, I was having the most terrible nightmare. And he describes how he murdered them. He chopped them up, which is exactly what he's going to do, which is 100% a premonition. And then Danny comes in all strangled from room 237, sucking his thumb.
You think maybe he needs to go to the doctor.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Oh man.
Dude,
okay.
Yes, he does.
So, well, let's talk about this whole thing. I love how Jack starts seeing ghosts. He's shining. He talks to Lloyd, the bartender, immediately just starts bad-mouthing his wife. She's done nothing. And he's like, the old ball and chain.
No, he calls her the old sperm bank.
That's true. The
Even
old sperm bank.
Worse
That's
than
true,
ball and chain.
Way worse. Yes. So gross. He goes up to check room 237, and he gets attacked by the old drowned lady ghost. In the book, they go into detail about how that room, the drowned lady, is there. And anyone who shines a little bit is going to see her or feel her anyone who doesn't shine will not.
Yeah.
Like Ullman, the manager who's gone in there and checked, didn't find her. But one of the maids did. One of the maids who shined just a little bit went in there, saw her, got scared, told everyone about it, got fired. Dick Halloran went in there, saw the evil dead lady, decided to quit. He doesn't want to work there anymore. Jack goes in there, gets attacked by the evil dead lady. Doesn't just see her. She couldn't attack Dick. Dick specifically says, he's like, they're just like pictures. They can't hurt you. They can hurt Jack.
You think that Dick wasn't lying about them not being able to hurt you, just that he doesn't shine enough for them to be able to hurt him.
Well, exactly. And in the book, they go into more detail about that. He very specifically is thinking this. He tells Danny that they're just like pictures in a book. They can't hurt you. And then in his mind, he's thinking to himself, I hope that's true for this little boy. They can't hurt me, but he shines something like I don't shine. So, he basically is confirming exactly what you're saying. Jack goes back to his room and is just like lying to Wendy, being like, there was nothing there. He's like, but what about the marks on his neck? And Jack's like, I think he did it to himself. Of course, Danny went in there and strangled himself and then came in all traumatized. That makes sense.
I think that's like possible.
It's not. It's so silly. I love it. And then someone says that Danny's sleeping, and then the camera pans over to Danny with his eyes like unbelievably wide open in bed, very much not sleeping. Which I just love that. That's very, very Kubrick. Wendy basically comes downstairs trying to reason with Jack, and he's like, you want to talk about Danny. You want to talk about what should be done with Danny. She's like, no, I don't want to talk about it. And he's like, what should we do with Danny? And she's like, I think we should take him to the doctor. He's like,
you think
you want to take him to the doctor? Very reasonable. Like the kid was hurt. Take him to the doctor.
You had asked what my impression of The Shining was the first time I watched it, and I told you about when I just saw the old lady scene. My actual first viewing of the whole thing, my main takeaway was that The Simpsons did an amazing parody of The Shining in like
very true
in 7 minutes.
Very true to life. Yeah, they covered everything.
It's so good. Just like Homer's not even exaggerated in that scene. That's exactly how cartoonish
Homer's
Jack Nicholson is in
holding back.
Give me the bat.
Yeah, I know. No, Simpson's really hit the nail on the head.
Simpson is less cartoonish because, Marge isn't doing like the whole Wendy, like the whole Shelley Duvall thing, which is like, like weakly swinging this bat.
When Simpsons does Here's Johnny, they also do a bunch of other ones. Like he says, I'm whoever, and I'm Danny Carson all tonight on 60 Minutes, right? Like this actually is what Jack was doing. Like Simpsons isn't even out of line here. Jack was literally just quoting a random TV host for no reason, right? Like Here's Johnny was like Johnny Carson's phrase, right? Why did he say that? Until it became
like one of the most famous horror quotes in history.
Exactly. It doesn't make sense because he's not Johnny.
No, he's Jack. I wouldn't be surprised if people who haven't seen this movie in a while thought his name was Johnny.
I always did before I saw the movie for the first time. I thought he was Johnny Torrance.
At AFI, I listened to all of Shelley Duvall's, like I sought them out because I love Shelley Duvall.
Whoa.
And I no one had assigned me to do this. I listened to Shelley Duvall's, all of her interviews. Shelley Duvall, who's just such a sweet, nice person, was just talking about like, yeah, I was in that scene where he was swinging the axe and, Jack was really psyching himself up for it and saying all these profanities and just saying these really nasty things that I can't repeat here or I'd get sued.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's true. You can see behind the scenes like footage of them getting ready to film that scene.
He scares the production assistant who walks past him because he's swinging his axe. The production assistant
he's
flinches.
Just standing there like jumping around the room, and then he just starts playing around with this axe, which is like, I don't know if it's a real axe, but it's hefty enough to damage the door. Like he chops through the door with it, and he's just swinging it around, and he's like saying all kinds of like horrible things. He's like, axe, kill, murder. And I'm like, whoa, Jack Nicholson, you're getting into character.
And Shelley Duvall talked about how like the robe that she wears and goes out in the snow in during that final sequence, where she's running, because it has to have snow on it, but they didn't want the snow to melt. They put this like weird like salt stuff all over it that they glued to it, and she had like an allergic reaction to that. At the end of a really long day, there was a fire on set. She had to like run back to her dressing room because apparently she always traveled with like a menagerie of animals.
Oh no. Save the animals.
She had to get all her animal pets out because of this fire. And then she went back to her like trailer at the end of the day and she was so tired. And then another director that she worked with a lot, Altman, called her up on the phone, and he's a really like happy, fun guy, and was like, "Hey, Shelley, how you doing? I just got the best role for you to play." And she's like, "Ugh." And he's like, "Guess what it is?" And she's like, "I don't know." And he's like, no, you have to guess. And she was like, "I have had the longest day. I'm tired. I'm dehydrated. There was a fire on set. I'm having a reaction from the salt on my robe. Just tell me." And then he said, "Oh, it's olive oil in the Popeye movie."
Oh, it's so perfect for her. She's the perfect
And then apparently, she was just perfect for olive oil. Apparently she went and recorded, I guess, an audition reel. Like Altman already wanted her, but he had to convince like the producers and the financiers.
Yeah, of course.
He had her record it's just singing the song, "He needs me, he needs me."
Oh, that's a good song. It's got like 3 lyrics. It's like 3 words in it. All at once, I knew it once, I knew it once, I knew he needed me. It's such a good song.
Guy in charge, executive, whatever he was, wasn't sure. But then as they were watching this video of her singing it, his wife came in and she pointed at the girl on the screen because he was suggesting other people. And she pointed at Shelley Duvall and was like, "Well, that's olive oil." And so then he was like,
"How much did the director pay her to do that?"
I know.
That's incredible. That's so good.
And he was like, "Oh, yeah, that is olive oil. We'll go with her." So, that's how she got the job.
Oh man, that's like the most boomer story I've ever heard. That's ridiculous. That's so good.
She said that she didn't think she was that good of an olive oil for a few reasons. And one of them was like, "I just can't do the things that she can, like with her arms, like turning into rubber bands."
Yeah, like noodle arms. Well, no one can do that.
So she was like, "I actually tried to play her a little bit more like Stan Laurel from Laurel and Hardy." Was that she was trying to be like a goofy tall person?
Yeah, like a goofy silent film character. Yeah, gangly one. That makes sense. Basically, I heard all kinds of stories about how they were abusing Shelley Duvall to get a great performance out of her. And I've been hearing more and more in the past few years that was pretty much just a rumor. And that if you watch the interviews with Shelley Duvall, she wasn't like ecstatic about her.
It was a stressful shoot for sure.
Right, it was stressful, but she never says that they were abusing her. And she specifically isn't like going off on Stanley Kubrick. An interview that a lot of people point to where they're like, "And how do you feel about Stanley Kubrick?" And she says, "Oh, he's a wonderful man. He just treated me and Jack Nicholson so nice. He came and took us aside and gave us one-on-one time. Really pampered us, let us know how important we were to the movie." I mean, if that's how she felt about him, then I don't think he was abusing her. However, there's also behind the scenes footage of her in the scene where Jack is chopping the door down and she's supposed to try and crawl out the window. She's sitting there pulling like hairs off of her head, and she's like, "Mr. Kubrick, I'm losing my hair here. It's getting yanked out by that windowsill. I'm losing clumps and clumps of it." And then he takes one of the hairs and holds it up to the camera, and he's like, "Losing clumps of hair, eh?" Like basically making fun of her. Like this one hair is a clump. And then the clip ends with him being like, "Well, I don't relate to this at all," or something, or "I don't relate to your problem at all."
Oh no!
So he wasn't
She's
being
not
nice
a character in a movie right then. You don't need to relate to her.
Anyway,
she actually said it more than once in the interview where she would say there were things that Stanley Kubrick and Jack Nicholson said or did that she couldn't repeat Otherwise, she would get sued. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. But I also say at AFI, we did have one of the slates from The Shining, like framed in the window that shows like the slate is like the clackerboard, if you don't know.
Thanks for saying that. I didn't. I was picturing like a big, like a blackboard,
Okay.
like a slate.
So yeah, sorry. The slate is the clackerboard where you write the director, the scene, and then you write the take number. So basically how many times you've done the take. Anyway, if you look at that clackerboard, it says it's from The Shining, director Stanley Kubrick, and then the take numbers is like at 237.
Uh-oh.
Wow. Sorry, that's room 237. I'm not going to use that number.
That's a cursed number. Never do
no,
that
the take is
takes.
really high. It's like 246 or something like that. So the rumors are true that he did keep doing take after take after take.
Yeah, definitely. Jack, he's going crazy. He's seeing ghosts everywhere. He's attacking Shelley Duvall. And then Dick Halloran arrives to save the day. Oh, wait, he's dead. In the book, Jack does get Dick Halloran, but Dick survives and comes back and saves them after that. It's not bad that they killed him off, and in fact, it empowers Wendy even more in that she was able to save the day without a man saving her. I feel like Jack kind of like really sucked. He could not do anything. He couldn't beat Wendy. He just got bashed on the head and knocked out and locked in a pantry. And the ghosts let him out and he tries again. And then he gets his hand all slashed up and can't get her out of the bathroom. And then he does manage to get Dick. That's it. But then he can't hunt down like a little 5-year-old and he gets lost in the maze and then he dies.
Isn't there some sort of implication that maybe the maze changes? Like the ghosts turned against him.
I mean, the topiary animals were changing in the books, but in the movies, I don't think there's really any implication that the maze was changing. So as Wendy is running around the hotel trying to find Danny to get out of there, she's seeing ghosts. Again, you don't see these ghosts if you don't shine. It doesn't matter how much of effect they've had on you. If you don't shine, you don't see them. End of story. So Wendy shines.
She sees that weird dog furry man getting on with that other guy.
This is interesting because I was going to mention this. I don't really understand what the dog man and the businessman ghosts are doing at the hotel. First of all, his mask has no mouth hole. So whatever he's doing to that man would be very unsatisfying for both of them. Those guys, as far as I know, they didn't die at the hotel. They just did some debauchery there and then moved on with their lives. So why are there ghosts there? Wendy sees even more ghosts. In fact, she walks into the lobby and sees an entire room full of Halloween plastic skeletons. Wow. And I love it so much. Those skeletons were so scary. They're great.
I'm starting to feel like Dick Halloran should have said, most people shine, but some don't.
Wow, yeah. I mean, that is certainly the feeling you get. Because especially in the book, on his way to the hotel, Dick runs into 2 people who definitely shine and potentially one more who probably shines. And those are all the people he runs into. So everyone he runs into most likely shines. So yeah, the movie ends with Danny and Wendy escaping and Jack freezing to death in the maze. So 2 things in the book that were taken out that I wish they were in the movie. One is the hornet's nest. Jack has to deal with a hornet's nest. Kill it, get rid of all the hornets, and then he gives it to Danny as a present. He's like, hey, Danny, take this hornet's nest. It's yours. And Danny's like, oh boy, Daddy, thank you. And the mom's like, are you sure you want to give him a hornet's nest? And he's like, yeah, let's put it right over his bed. Lo and behold, that night, the kid wakes up covered in hornets from the hornet's nest. I think that the hornet's nest is a metaphor for Jack's alcoholism, for all of his problems in their life and their marriage. All the anger and pain hidden under the surface come to light.
Okay, I get it. And he passed it on to Danny.
Hell yeah. And essentially what's happening is he's kicking the hornet's nest, right? And that's why they used a hornet's nest, nest for this in-your-face metaphor. To kill all the hornets, he burns the nest and he watches the bodies pop. The book actually ends with the hotel burning down, and it kills Jack and it destroys the Overlook. As it's burning, he keeps talking about fire. Fire kills everything. And it turns out fire is the only thing that can kill Jack and the Overlook and the ghosts and can, remove all this alcoholism, all this rage, all this pain from their life is fire. And also, we learn that Jack had a very similar experience with his dad, who was also an alcoholic, who also beat his wife and kids. And he also found a hornet's nest, which he forced his kids to watch while he burned and taught them that, fire is the only thing that can kill it. Jack, in the book, he thought he killed the wasps, right? He thought the nest was safe. Just like he thought he had killed his drinking and his anger problems, right? He thought he was sober, but he didn't. He just hid it under the surface. And then, they came back and hurt his son and his wife in the middle of the night, just like the hornets came back. He never truly killed them.
He lit a hornet's nest on fire and he didn't bother to break it open.
No. So I'll explain exactly what happened. Basically, he was re-shingling the roof. He found the hornet's nest. He used a bug bomb on it, killed all the hornets, shook them out of the nest, and then gave it to his son. That night, hornets came out. He grabbed the nest, put it in a bowl, burnt it, and killed them.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought they survived the fire.
No, but
that would have been better for the metaphor, though.
Ostensibly, they didn't even survive the poison. He just didn't poison them. It is strongly hinted at that while he claims he poisoned these hornets, he actually just took the nest and gave it to his son full of hornets. He didn't do anything to them.
Or he did poison them, and those were ghost hornets, and Danny was shining.
That's also strongly implied, is that they might be ghost hornets. So there are a few times in this book where Jack lies.
Where he's like, just a little too many foot-pounds per second.
Right, exactly. There's the story of how he broke Danny's arm. In the book, there's also the story of how he basically set up one of the kids at school for failure. Kid was on the debate team and he thought this kid was a pretentious prick. So he essentially set the timer forward while this kid was debating. He was wearing a mask at the time. He was mask debating, actually. No, he wasn't. He was not. No, he set the timer forward, essentially leaving this kid unable to finish his mask debation, and he was blue-balled as the result. No.
Or blackballed?
Oh, no. Well, Jack got blackballed, actually. But no, he basically set the timer
debating
forward.
Enough.
At least this kid said that he set the timer forward. Jack said, no, I didn't set the timer forward. You just lost track of time. I would never do that. And then as the book goes along, he keeps, coming back to that and being like, I would never set the timer forward. I didn't do that. And he's like, and if I did, I only set it forward a little bit and it was only for his own sake. So he definitely set the timer forward.
Yeah.
And then in the same sentence, he's like, and I did use that bug bomb and kill those wasps, implying that no, he didn't. He didn't kill those wasps. He looks down on his son in the same way that he looked down on this pretentious prick kid, right? And he sees Danny as someone who didn't earn anything in life and has everything handed to him. And he hates Danny and he wants to kill Danny.
He's like 6, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Jack is so freaking unhinged, like possibly more unhinged in the book than in the movie, which is crazy. The other in-your-face metaphor in this book is the boiler. Jack has to constantly maintain the boiler at the Overlook. He's introduced to it by Watson, the boiler man, who tells him, the boiler, she creeps, so keep an eye on her. If you don't keep an eye on it, it's going to boil over and explode and kill you and your family and destroy your life, which is a direct mirror to his inner rage and alcoholism and anger. It creeps until
So
Jack
that's why they
boils
do
over
that at the end
and
of Dr.
explodes.
Sleep.
Exactly. So, and I was going to get into that. The end of Dr. Sleep, the film, I didn't read the book, but the end of the film just plagiarized the end of The Shining. And I don't know how the book could have ended because in The Shining, the hotel burnt down.
I think the director said that they had talked to Stephen King and he kind of pushed back, but they told him that we need to combine this with the Shining movie universe, which I'm glad they did because those were the only good parts of the movie.
That's the only good thing about it.
And so if that whole ending wasn't in the book, I can't imagine what good there was in the book because
probably not much. Yeah, so then there's the explosion. The boiler explodes just like Jack explodes. He lashes out, he loses control. The hotel burns, and when it burns, the smoke rising off from the hotel looks like a swarm of hornets leaving the nest, bringing these two metaphors together, showing us that his anger beneath the surface was the hornets in the hornet's nest as it boiled over and made the boiler explode in his heart. Anyway, I love it. It's so in your face. Dick Halloran tried to read Jack at the beginning of the book. He says lots of people shine. He says it seems to run in families. He says it runs in my family. And he would have conversations with his grandma without saying a word. And then Dick, he asks Danny, he says, your parents don't shine, do they? In a way that seems to imply that they don't. But I think he was actually asking. I think he just didn't want to lead Danny on. Then Dick, he announces that Wendy does shine. He says she jumped a bit when I probed her. Whoa, probed her. Dick probed Wendy. Oh no.
No.
So yeah, Wendy does shine, but he says, all mothers shine a little bit. I think he's sort of just downplaying it. Then he describes Jack, and Jack is like ultra shining. He says, Jack, he's like, well, your daddy's not someone who does or doesn't shine. He's like someone who's hiding something or holding it in so deeply that it's impossible to get to. And I think that this basically shows that Jack is so powerful, like that he's beyond Halloran, that Halloran can't actually get to him.
His shining is jacked.
At one point, Danny says, the things in the hotel, there's all kinds of them. The hotel's stuffed with them. I thought it was my fault because of the way I am, but it's him too. It's Daddy. And it's you, he's talking to Wendy. He says, it wants all of us. It's tricking Daddy. It's fooling him, trying to make it think it wants him the most. It wants me the most, but it'll take all of us. Basically, he's saying it's not just me shining. It's actually Dad and you, Wendy. So I think that's sort of the best evidence that Danny's basically confirming it. He's saying all three of us shine. The last thing I wanted to discuss is Tony. They never really explain who Tony is in the book or the movie. I think Tony is sort of Jack combined with Danny. I think they both shine so much that their psyches got stuck together, and he's like a subconscious mental manifestation of Jack's thoughts and desires and emotional state. Tony's premonitions, the things that he shows Danny, are all things that Jack knows. Jack specifically mentions that he's going to teach Danny to read this winter. And Tony very specifically always shows Danny premonitions in the form of written messages on signs. This is because Jack is subconsciously trying to teach him to read. Tony uses words and concepts that Jack knows, but Danny doesn't, such as murder, suicide, divorce, and road signs and caution signs. When Jack is thinking about suicide and divorce, it's exactly at this point that Tony starts showing them to Danny, right when Jack thinks about them. I think that's basically Jack's thoughts permeating Danny's mind. Also, when Jack was thinking about having another baby with Wendy during the best time of their marriage, Tony showed Danny a premonition where he has a baby brother, but that didn't actually happen, which implies to me that that was not a premonition. It was literally just a thought from his dad's head about having a baby.
Well, my theory with Tony was always that he is some sort of adult. I always thought maybe he was some kind of ghost, but someone who is an adult, because when he's talking to Wendy in The Shining, the movie, he calls her Mrs. Torrance. He says Mrs. Torrance, which is what a kid would call someone in the 70s. But then when he's talking to Danny alone in the mirror, he calls her Wendy. He says, like, Wendy thinks that we should, which is, to me, says he's trying to act more kid-like around Wendy, but he's not actually a kid. He feels like he's an adult along with her because he'll call her by her first name.
Towards the end of the book, Tony gets locked out of Danny's mind right after the hotel beats the last little bit of resistance out of Jack, right after he goes full crazy mode and decides to sabotage the snowmobile and falls completely under the hotel's control, which implies to me that Jack can't get into his kid's head anymore. He's gone. Jack's not here anymore. Danny sees Tony one last time at the end of the book, and he sees Tony's face, and he says, he looks like Danny, but 10 years from now. He says he looks like he calls him a halfling, but he doesn't mean like from J.R.R. Tolkien's books. He means like half and half. He says he looks like a halfling caught between father and son, a ghost of both Jack and Danny. Effusion is how he's described. Therefore, I think that kind of proves it. That's what he is.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Dr. Sleep. It's quite a movie. I didn't like it. I also
garbage.
Walked out of it in the theater because I didn't like it so much, which I've never done before or since.
Yeah, no, I was only able to palate it because I wasn't watching it in the theater and I could skip ahead.
Well, we learn in Dr. Sleep that there are energy vampires that feed on the energy of people who shine. So stupid. But anyway, the hotel, we learn, is essentially just an inanimate energy vampire. It sucks the energy out of shiners and uses that to strengthen itself, and therefore its ghosts grow stronger and stronger from the people who stay at the hotel who shine. And we also learn that kids shine the most pure. Adults who shine get smudged and dirty and grimy. Doesn't mean they don't shine as strong. It just means they're less appealing to energy vampires. So I think that sort of shows why the hotel, it liked Jack, but it loved Danny, right? Like Danny tasted better. Now, why don't I like the Dr. Sleep? I feel like the movie takes forever to do anything, and it's a real downer, and it's like depressing. 2 hours and 40 minutes, and it's like, geez.
It would be better to talk about what I do like about Dr. Sleep.
Yeah, exactly. It has some good parts. The beginning's great. I love the beginning.
Is amazing.
It starts out with an awesome,
not all of it, but when he's still a kid and he's little Danny.
The kid part.
The lady they got to play Wendy is insanely good at being Shelley Duvall.
So good at doing
I think
Shelley
they
Duvall
even got
impression.
her prosthetic teeth to look like Shelley Duvall.
It's possible.
It's crazy. And she's just like when Danny gets lost at the park or beach or whatever, the way she's running, she's like,
Danny.
Yeah. Danny,
she's so
where are you?
And
then she's always calling him Doc and just, she does the voice so well. And then the ending when he hugs her in front of the boiler, I thought it was just wonderful.
No, she's great. She was amazing. Dick Halloran, I thought was amazing.
Was great.
He was channeling Scatman.
I absolutely loved the guy they got to play Jack because he's not you can do an over the top Jack Nicholson hey, what you doing there kind of thing. He's not doing it over the top, but he's doing a pretty good Jack Nicholson.
He is.
It's not cartoonish, and his monologue that he says about your family, they just take time, and kids, they're taking time from you, and just he goes on and on as his son is talking to him at the bar where he went crazy. And then he's like, it's a sickness, it gets into you, and this here, and raises up his drink. This here is the antidote.
It's the antidote, it's the cure. Oh man, he's such a good bartender, just drinking his own stock.
I know. I absolutely loved that part. Really, anything after they go to the Overlook at the end is great. The guy who plays Jack Nicholson, he's the kid from E.T. He's the main character from E.T.
That's nuts. Whoa.
Apparently someone knew that guy can do a good Jack Nicholson and got him.
That's so weird. That's cool. All the stuff where they do flashbacks is pretty good. I feel like the movie didn't deserve it because it could not be more
everything else is so bad
from The Shining. Leading up to the ending, the best thing that happens is Danny and his best friend dig up a dead body, and Danny's like, ew, this dead body stinks. And then his best friend's like, one time, a long time ago, I went out hunting and I shot a deer and I thought for sure it was dead. But then that deer, she disappeared. I couldn't find her anywhere. And days passed and I went out hunting again. And then I found that deer. I could smell her. I smelled that deer. I found her all curled up, been dead 4 days. And that deer smelled just like this body. I was like, wow,
what a very roundabout way of saying
incredibly
decaying
long
things
metaphor,
smell
long
similar.
Story to explain, yes, dead bodies smell like dead bodies. Oh man, I love that. That was actually good writing. That was getting into almost Stephen King levels of good. Dead bodies stink. You know what dead bodies smell like? Dead bodies.
Dead bodies.
Well, and then the other good scene was one that you primed me for. When
the sniping scene?
Yeah, essentially.
Crazy.
He ain't Dr. Sleep. He's Dr. Sniper. He's Man,
Dude's
Danny's
like a
good with a gun.
Sharpshooter. Marksman. He has
Killed
like 7 confirmed
energy
kills.
vampires. That was insane.
Who apparently can just be killed. They're not like,
yeah,
cool
I thought they were like
vampires.
immortal. Nope, bullets work. Well, and then like I feel like Danny made the wrong choice trying to, after killing all of the other ones with bullets and cars, he's like, I'm going to have the final confrontation in the hotel that can hurt me, and I'm going to use an axe. And I'm like, oh, Danny, you should have just used a gun and done it anywhere but here. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
the final sequence is, I feel like, just genius, but I feel like they didn't quite go as far as they should have with it.
yeah.
With like, he needs to hide the girl while he goes full Jack Torrance mode.
Exactly.
Because only his terrible dad can beat this evil woman. And I think in some way it kind of almost justifies the terrible scenes of this evil woman because you hate her so much.
I know.
And if you've watched The Shining, you're like, I want Jack Torrance
win.
to just
you want to see Jack
kill
murder
her.
this girl.
And I want her to be terrified, like Shelley Duvall, hiding behind the door. And unfortunately, they didn't quite go that far.
No,
they go in that direction.
The Jurassic World principle comes into play here. And they set it up perfectly. They bring back Danny, everyone's favorite. Everyone wanted to see Danny again, the kid who shines like no one else. And then they bring in this new kid, Abra. She shines even more than Danny does. She can move spoons. She can enter the brains of vampires and hurt them. Whoa, she's even more powerful than Danny. All we wanted to see was them bringing back the T-Rex to beat the Indominus Rex. Right? All we wanted to see was, hey, bring back Old Faithful. Bring back Danny. Show that he's still got it. They sort of did. But like you said, they didn't quite commit. Now, what I wanted to happen, Ghost Jack was there. And all the other ghosts killed this energy vampire girl. Now, I have to believe that Ghost Jack wouldn't just sit there and let some energy vampire bitch suck on his kid while all the other ghosts save him. Like, how dumb was that? They should have had axe-wielding, unstoppable Ghost Jack burst in and save the day. Yeah. I was like, why have him here if he's not going to do anything?
I mean, so that's already like halfway amazing to have the vampire girl get like terrified by the Grady twins, because they're iconic. But like, to have Jack with an axe show up, I know, or like, especially because Danny tells the girl to hide. Yes. I wish he had been like, I have to become an alcoholic, so I need to get rid of this girl.
The other half of what I was going to say, they should
the
have
medicine.
Had
and
Danny
I know
drink
from
some
a
alcohol
thematic
and
point
power
of view,
up.
It makes no sense because it's a bad thing, but still, to become an even worse monster than her.
Exactly. This is the one thing that we know from the Shining universe is that if you are Jack or if you're Jack's son, drinking alcohol at the Overlook makes you unstoppable. It turns you into an evil monster. And I would have loved to see Danny just, like, he could have gotten hurt. He could have been dying. He could have crawled back to Jack on his knees and been like, give me the antidote. Give me the medicine. And Jack could have been like, take your medicine, pup. Right? And then he could have just super powered up and gone Jack mode on her ass and stalked her around the hotel. It would have been amazing.
Ewan McGregor doing like a Jack Nicholson. He's so good.
I know. Having all the ghosts of the Overlook kill her? Come on. We don't care about that.
Yeah, it's okay. I love to see him again. They can
or Danny kill
and
her.
Help.
That's everything I have to say. I think we've pretty much confirmed that Jack's whole family had the Shining. Yeah, they all shined. Shine on.
If you do watch Dr. Sleep, just like skip to the end. Skip to the Overlook.
Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoy what we're doing. Tell your friends. Tell them we got a cool little Shining theory.
Support us on Patreon. This recording is now at 3 hours long, so I'm assuming a lot of content.
More than 3 hours long. Yeah. We're going to have a lot of outtakes.
Will end up as outtakes on Patreon.
For now, remember,
the popcorn isn't real.
In a world of shadows and dreams, nothing is quite what it seems. We're the fools in a midnight reel. The popcorn isn't real. Chasing clues through the silver screen, wishing for a tale that's unseen. Hold my hand through this hazy spiel. The popcorn isn't real. Behind the curtain, there's nothing to feel. The popcorn isn't real. Caught in a moment that will never heal. The popcorn isn't real. We craft a fiction within fiction's mind, searching for secrets we'll never find. Every clue just a future we steal. The popcorn isn't real. We whisper theories, but they all fade. A fleeting ghost in a midnight parade, holding on to that surreal's appeal.